you ever see Us?
Us?
The movie Us by Jordan Peele.
I did not know.
Oh. Really?
Yeah, it was one of those I meant to.
Did you not watch it with us?
I did not watch Us with us. Who'd you watch it with?
I don't know. I watched it here. I assumed everyone was here. Anyway, there's like a weird subplot about Hands Across America in that movie. And that was a kind of a...
Is that a movement, a movie?
It was like a weird stunt in the mid-'80s sometime. And the idea was to have a line of people holding hands that stretched all the way across the United States. So there were people in like every town coordinating.
Okay.
Their chain of people, getting people signed up, getting people shown up, trying to cover whatever distance they were responsible for. And at a certain time, everybody reaches up and holds hands. And
that poor person, the people in Death Valley who just have to... Oh my God.
I don't know exactly.
We gotta keep the chain connected.
I don't know where the route went. I don't know how it wound through, but...
Maybe they took a shortcut.
I'm sure.
And it was from, like, the North Coast to the South Coast.
It does seem like, like maybe spanning, like, the Mississippi River and
the shortest distance.
Getting around Death Valley. And, like, there had to be a weird way they had to weave it back and forth to be able to manipulate all of the...
Everyone step onto the highway.
Yeah.
Route
I don't know
66.
exactly if it worked. I don't even know. I don't even remember if it if they actually succeeded in doing it.
Well, we have to figure this out.
I do think it would have been cool if I would have gone to it. And when they said, all right, everyone hold his hands. And then I would just let go and go, I broke the chain. And, and then America just, all the states, like, separate. Everybody, it just floats out into the ocean and disperses.
That's our second Civil War.
I could have saved America. We could be a series of island nations right now. Easily governed, easily a better utopian society, small enough to take care of each other and be community-minded.
When is your young adult
dystopian
novel
actually, that'd be a utopian
out?
Novel, if you want my honest opinion.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Oh, maybe that is the next thing. Or maybe I'll run for office, and that will be my platform.
Let's do it.
Hands Across America to destroy America. That's right. That's right, Fox News. The real liberal agenda. I'm bringing it out here.
First we come for the pandas. Now we're coming for America.
Hello and welcome to the Picture Show with Austin and Phil Rude. I am Phil Rude. I'm the dad, and I'm back in the driver's seat where I belong.
That's right. I've been tossed back into the passenger sidecar.
Quiet, Chewie.
And I'm not Chewie. I'm Austin Rude. I'm the son on this show, where each week we watch a movie and then we talk about it.
That's right. If anybody is an astute listener and is paying attention, Austin is taking the lead on the episodes for the movies that he picks out, which includes the entire trilogy that we just covered. And the movies that I pick, I'm taking the lead on. We're trying to switch roles and everybody gets to drive their episode a little.
That's right. We're breaking up the dictatorship here.
That's right. Yeah, we're...
AKA Austin has stopped being lazy and...
That's not true. Austin, you've done the show notes on your episodes for most of last season. You're taking a little more of a... I don't want to call it assertive. I don't want to... You're just being a little more proactive in... The more you're learning, the more active you are in the production of the show.
I'm learning more about pre and post production.
Yeah, which I think is really, I think that's really cool. I think that's really great that you want to take on more, and Not just to take it off of me, but that you want to learn. I think there's...
Right. Well, someone has to kind of step up and, once this show gets really big, then I'm going to have to...
You want to be able to fire me and get a better co-host. Right. And you're like, oh, Dad, you've done a good job bringing the show this far, but...
It's Planet of the Apes. Each season, each movie, I'm going to slowly take over the planet more and more.
Yeah, I'm a little bit out of touch the older I'm getting, and it's like, oh my God, my dad has got these really outdated worldviews. He's getting embarrassing.
I've saved some tweets. I'm going to release them at the right time.
Matter of time. Anonymous sources talk about the time that... Phil said pandas should die. Oh, no. Oh.
Phil Rude.
That was all a big trap that you set for me. So right. I would get canceled by the pro-panda lobby.
I'll log into your Twitter and make a tweet about Norm Macdonald right up. Just
How dare you? How dare you, sir?
It was you. You said it.
That is too far. You're fired. Welcome to the Picture Show with Phil and Austin. Not Austin Rude. Phil and Logan Rude. There. I stepped on my own joke. Anyway, what have you been up to this week? What have you been watching? Reading? Consuming?
It's all about consuming. I watched... What did I watch? I watched Free Guy.
Oh, Free Guy.
That's right. With Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
I've heard good things. Despite the fact that I have no interest in that movie at all, I have heard some pretty positive stuff.
It's basically a mashup of Truman Show and the Lego Movie.
Lego Movie is something I have heard comparisons to, which I am a fan of the Lego Movie. So that, that's good stuff.
Yeah, it's a good movie. It's kind of cheesy, but like it's got like a romance subplot.
Right.
But of course it does. And so it kind of works out. And yeah, Taika Waititi's good in it.
Is he in it?
Yeah. He's like the villain.
Did he write it, or is he involved in like the production in any way, or is he just an actor in it?
I think he's just an actor, but don't quote me on that.
I don't want to go like deep spoilers, but you say cheesy, and I've heard that a lot, like we talked about last week with like people gravitating towards things like Bob Ross and Ted Lasso because there is this sort of positivity around it. I've heard that Free Guy at its heart has a very like positive message about like people wanting to take their online content back from trolls and things like that and make it a more positive experience. Does it play off as cheesy because we're so like jaded with so much, or we're just so used to it that it stands out? Or is it kind of executed cheesy? Or am I just hearing, and I've not seen the movie, I'm just telling you what I've heard, and I'm very interested in this phenomenon of positivity being like this novelty thing, but people are piling on it because we're so starved for it.
Right. No, I wouldn't. I know what you're talking about. There's a subplot with, basically, there's this GTA style game.
Right.
Right. But the coding for it was created by like these two indie video game creators.
Right.
Who sold the idea. And then the creator of this video game said, he got rid of that and started this new thing, but he actually just built it around the existing programming.
Right. Okay.
And so it's basically them trying to get the rights to their game back.
Take their game back.
Right. And that I thought was like a really good metaphor for taking back your content, fighting like big monopolies. But like the cheesy part comes with like those two indie game creators. They have like this longing romance for each other, but neither of them will say anything. And
right. It's like
it's
a little tropey kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just an added little thing, and I'm like, I still would have left the theater happy if you didn't have that.
Sure. You did enjoy the movie, though, overall?
Yeah, it was a fun movie.
Cool.
Yeah. It was a homage to pop culture in a way that isn't
like Ready Player One.
It isn't like that. So it was good.
Good. That's cool. Ryan Reynolds doing his Ryan Reynolds thing.
Yeah. No Deadpool references, though.
Well, if you reference Deadpool, you have to reference that he's in Deadpool.
Right.
How do you do that?
They'd find a way.
Yeah.
There's a lightsaber in it. They use some Marvel, some Disney properties.
Right. But when you have the actor from The Thing, it's hard to use him in The Thing without acknowledging The Thing. And that, hey, you look exactly like the actor from Deadpool.
It's meta. Deadpool is meta.
Fair. They could have.
Anyway, when I'm not rewriting a movie for no reason, what have you been up to this week?
Not a whole lot. I have been wrapping up some for hire artwork. I've been getting a little more writing done. Have not really consumed a whole lot. I started rereading The Shining. It's going to be my Halloween read this year.
I see. Better start it early since that's a big book, right?
It's by Stephen King standards, no. It's actually pretty modest. I think it's like 600 pages, something like that.
Oh, that's nothing.
For Stephen King? Yeah. I mean,
I know he's long-winded.
It was, I think, his third novel, so he still kind of had an editor keeping a reins on. Somewhere in the 80s, they took the leash off of him, and they're like, go wild, man. And then, like...
And he did.
2,000-page novels started dropping from the sky and crushing small children. But, I started reading a graphic novel that I will talk about in our recommendations. And, I watched a Leonard Skinner documentary on, Netflix.
It's a band, right?
It is a band. It's a southern rock band from the 70s. I saw them live 20 plus years ago. I found it to be pretty interesting because they are essentially exactly what you think like Leonard Skinner is. They're a bunch of like Florida rednecks who put a great rock and roll band together. And it's really, really interesting because they do talk about, like, at a certain point, they became, part of their branding was, like, the rebel flag. They address that in the documentary. It's actually very interesting. They're like, look, this always meant this to us. It never meant to offend anybody, but now we can see it is offensive to people. And
are they still alive?
I will say about half of them are still alive.
Okay.
But the documentary kind of ends with a plane crash that happened in the late 70s. Yeah, late 70s. There was a plane crash that killed 3 or 4 band members.
Oh wow.
And kind of ended them for a while. I don't know. It's an interesting documentary because these are a bunch of like Florida rednecks. They're rough and tumble. They're drunks. They were druggies. They were country boys who were not cultured at all.
They're not like the people that are bred to be,
but they're
a band.
They're not basically. Right. They're also like not what we think of now when you think of like these white trash, intolerant, really like kind of garbage people. When people say redneck now, it kind of almost means something different. They're actually looking at things very clearly and going, oh, the record label put the rebel flag on everything. And, we kind of regret that now. They had songs about like gun control and things like that. It's really, really interesting. That I never thought of. Mr. Saturday Night Special that's a song about like gun violence, And it's like, holy crap, I had never really paid attention to it, but you look at it and it's like, Ronnie Van Zant was talking about, I hate guns. There's all this violence. I'm so tired of seeing this violence, and this is senseless and things like that. So it's a really interesting look at a band that I think is interesting, and I think they get written off as this kind of like, they're like the Allman Brothers, but like a poor man's Allman Brothers band. And it's like, well, they're both Southern rock bands, but they're apples and oranges at a certain point, and I think they're both great. So, it's nothing deep. It's not like it's kind of just a pop culture documentary, but if you're a fan of classic rock, I'd say give it a look. I like music documentaries and band documentaries, so and I've listened to Skynyrd for a long time, so it's pretty cool.
Music is one of those things where I don't stay up to date with like bands a lot. Like,
you don't have to be up to date with Leonard Skinner. They're like a 50-year-old band.
Well, right.
But yeah. No, I know.
But I'm saying like documentaries like that, that's how I kind of get my information about bands. Cause like I don't spend the time to research like, oh, who's in this band I like?
Sure.
Who makes it up? What is their life story? I had time to do that when I was in like middle school, and
right.
Then I was like, at this point I don't care.
See, you're at a point now where you're like busy with work and stuff that you're probably just beginning to understand why like older people stop keeping up with music at a certain point. You know what I mean? And kind of like there's a lot of new music that I don't know, but I also hate when people get old and they don't keep up with music, so their response to it is, it's all garbage. And
right.
It's just sort of like, you
right.
don't have to keep up with everything, but just to say that, like, it's all crap and it was all better back when I was a kid is, I hate that. It is like the laziest answer to music that you just don't understand. Like,
right. It's cliche, old people. Come on.
For real. You know, I didn't know Post Malone. I didn't knock Post Malone. But when I stopped and listened to a little bit of Post Malone, I'm like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And then when you see like I don't know, did you ever see that thing where he was playing, it was like a benefit for Texas early in the pandemic to support like small businesses in Texas because he's from Austin. But he sang like, he did his YouTube video as part of that where he was singing like country music. And everyone's like, oh my God, Post Malone singing country. And I checked it out. I'm like, it's really, really good. And I'm like, this guy is surprising. This guy does all kinds of music really well.
I've heard Post Malone. I haven't heard about any of this. So that's news to me.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. I don't know if it ever got like released as like singles or something. But he did like 2 or 3 country songs. He did a Sturgill Simpson song, I know. And he did it with Dwight Yoakam's band. And it was really just a really interesting way. I always like to see an artist step outside of what they normally do and go, yeah, I also love this music. And so I'm going to play some of this just as like a tribute to that.
I like it when artists like step out of their normal genre.
I hate when they do it and people are like, hey, you're not a country guy. Or this guy likes country music. I don't like him anymore. And it's like, dude, musicians love all kinds of music. By and large, I think if you really talk to or look at interviews with them, you'll find like no musician is like, well, I'm a metal guy, so that's all I play and all I listen to. They all listen to everything.
Right. This guy's appropriating country music.
Yeah, it's so wild what people get upset about. That project on people. But anyway, now that I'm done being an old man screaming about other old man bullshit, the other thing I watched this week is the kickoff to our second trilogy. Today we are discussing 1981's indie horror cult classic, The Evil Dead. This movie is about 5 friends who travel to a cabin in the woods where they unknowingly release flesh-possessing demons. This stars Bruce Campbell as Ash, Betsy Baker as Linda, Ellen Sandweiss as Cheryl, Richard DeManincore as Scott, and Teresa Tilley as Shelley. This was written and directed by Sam Raimi. This was his first film. And IMDb also lists 18 people in their credits as fake Shemps. And I had to look this up because I have heard the term before, but I wasn't sure what it was. A fake Shemp is when somebody, like a movie is partially finished filming, and then an actor is unavailable to be in a scene for whatever reason. Sometimes, apparently this originated when Shemp Howard from the Three Stooges died, and they needed to fulfill their contract to the studio. They had stand-ins for Shemp, and they basically shot him from behind. They worked around it.
Okay. And
that's what this is, because apparently...
So, like, body doubles.
Yes. Not a stunt double, but essentially a body double or a stand-in actor that they kind of try to hide, the face, or try to hide that it's not the original actor. Apparently this film ran into several delays, mostly budget related. And so the cast was either unavailable or abandoned the project or moved on or refused to come back, whatever the reason is.
Right.
So they used, whoever was available. Sam Raimi's brothers, I think, are stand-ins. I don't have it all opened up, but...
That's really interesting.
It really is, and I think it speaks so much to the independent nature of this movie. This movie looks super cheap. This movie is very clearly not studio-backed. This was an independent venture. That is not to say it looks bad. It just looks cheap. So you can understand how this probably stalled out a few times, and how people who were working on it probably weren't getting paid, or weren't getting paid a lot, or thought they weren't going to be paid at the end of it. They're like, this thing is never even going to come out. A lot of crew walked off this movie. So it is very much an independent film. And 6 if you count the demon voices, which is Sam Raimi.
Really?
Doing the demon voices. Wow. But yeah, there's only 5 people in this movie. There's over 3 times that many stand-ins for those 5 people.
Granted, with a movie like this, you could just put that zombie demon face on, like, anyone, and, like, I would have not been able to tell the difference if there was a completely different...
For sure. The amount of makeup in the last third of this movie is, I think, probably made it easy. I was watching this again yesterday, and just kind of scrubbed through. I didn't watch the whole thing, but at certain points I was looking. It was after I had done research on, like...
So you're kind of looking for the...
I was looking to see if I could spot the fake Shemps, and when you get to the third act and everybody's, like, under makeup, like, got a mask on, and it's like, clearly that could be anyone. There's so many, like, POV shots in this movie, where you see, like, one of the women, I don't remember which one, but when they're, like, hitting her with an axe, and she's got her hands up, and that's what you see is her hands. It's like, that could be anybody's hands. Like,
so you think those POV shots that are throughout the movie are there to hide the fake shims?
Shemps.
Shemps.
I don't know that all of them are, because I think this movie does have a very clear, like, style to it. And I think a lot of that POV stuff is Sam Raimi's style in this movie.
Right, that's what I was thinking, is that, like, this is...
But I think it worked out kind of luckily for him that he was probably able to conceal a lot in some of those shots. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, you get more kind of leniency when when it's not like this clean cut kind of filming style.
And there's a couple other shots where there's not makeup, where I think there's a shot where I think Scott, the other guy, not Bruce Campbell, was like, what is he doing?
When he's like injured?
He has like an axe and he's like trying to beat the Cheryl, I think her name is, the first girl who they locked in the basement.
Yeah, he's backing her away with like the blunt.
Yeah, and I think that's a fake Shemp. I think that's a different actor. And it's kind of like he's not behind anything, but it's moving so fast and it's a little bit out of focus. It's like, I can kind of see that. The hair looks a little different. I'm like, I can kind of see that possibly being a different actor. It looks kind of slightly different in the same way. If you've ever seen Terminator 2, I remember there's one shot in there where Arnold takes a motorcycle like off a jump.
Yeah.
And it's a slow motion shot, and in that shot you can clearly see that it's Arnold's stunt double. He looks a lot like him, but it's focused on him enough that you can within just watching that shot without even freezing the frame, you can very clearly see that's not Arnold Schwarzenegger.
That is not his face.
And it's very close, and if you're not paying attention, you might not catch it, but if you are paying attention, it's very clear to see. And this is, I think, much better than that because it's not slow motion and he's moving around a lot. And it is one of those things. It's like, that could definitely be a double.
Yeah. You said, that this was like, it looked very clearly to be an indie production. I don't know. My first thought when I saw this movie was just, oh, this is like an old kind of movie.
That too. Yeah.
Like, because there's this, like, dolly shot from behind the car where it's very, like, shaky.
Mm-hmm.
And my first thought when I saw that was, like, oh, if this was a modern-day movie, they'd have, like, a very smooth... They probably could have done that then, too, if they had the money. But I was just thinking, like, they didn't have the technology back then.
The film stock is really bad. Like, the film is...
It's grainy.
It's grainy. It's ugly. But it's not terribly far off of other low-budget movies from the 70s and early 80s. You know what I mean? Like
it gives me Blair Witch vibes.
Kind of, but it's about 15 to 20 years before Blair Witch.
Really?
Yeah. Blair Witch is...
I thought Blair Witch was like 80s.
No, Blair Witch is late 90s.
Okay.
But are you talking about the tracking shot of when they're first arriving at the...
Yeah, when they get to the cabin.
There's something so great in that shot, that was accidental and I think just makes it is so perfect, I think, is when, they get over the bridge and they're approaching the cabin and there's like this group of trees that kind of closes in over the car, you know?
Yeah.
And they go through that, and when they come out the other side, they're dragging a branch on the ground. And it just adds so much atmosphere. And I know it was accidental. There's no way you would even think to do that. But, like, the bumper had picked up this loose branch. It probably broke off when the car went through or something. And it adds so much atmosphere to, oh, this is the woods. This is the deep woods. This is... Right. And it
well, that shot is very claustrophobic.
For sure.
It's, and, like, you know... Knowing what happens after that, you look back at that and you're like, it's the woods closing in on them.
It's this ominous kind of
it's grabbing
foreshadowing
hold of the car.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way it was planned, I don't think, and it just sort of drags along for a while and then it just lets loose and the car goes on, and I don't know. That was the first thing that grabbed me about this movie, was like, that's a brilliant shot that they didn't even mean to do. And I think that's what's so cool about indie filmmaking, I think. It's just like the happy, you know, take it to Bob Ross again, the happy accidents.
We'll keep it in there. It works. That kind of thing.
Sam Raimi's car, by the way.
Really?
That car is, do you recognize it?
Should I?
Yes.
Oh boy.
Because it is in almost every Sam Raimi movie.
He's never gotten a new car.
I'm sure he has several cars by now, but that's
so
Uncle Ben's car from Spider-Man.
I see. Which, by the way, who saw this movie and thought, let's give this guy our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and let's see what he'll come up with.
Well, you have to remember this was 20 years before he would direct Spider-Man.
So, but he's a primarily horror director, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's fair. His roots are in horror anyway. But by the time he did Spider-Man, he had also done Darkman, which if you've never seen Darkman, you should totally watch it.
I have not.
Because that movie is fucking bananas. It is Liam Neeson as a burn victim who wears synthetic faces and imitates gangsters to kill them. And it is surreal, and it is weird, and it is kind of off its rocker sometimes. It is. I saw that movie before I had any idea who Sam Raimi was. And then I watch it knowing who Sam Raimi was years later. And I'm like, oh, this makes so much more sense because I understand this director's sensibility now.
He kind of is off his rocker.
He kind of does these weird, surreal movies. And if that's what you want to bring to a Spider-Man movie, then it kind of makes sense. And when Spider-Man came out, comic book movies were not like dark and gritty. They weren't being taken as like, I don't want to say they weren't for adults, but they were not necessarily taken as seriously. It was kind of experimental at the time that Spider-Man came out.
Well, that's what I'm saying is like Sam Raimi does not seem like he makes kids movies. And really those Spider-Man movies don't seem like kids movies.
No, I wouldn't say they're kids movies. I would call them all ages movies.
There's a weird, like, dark tone to them, though.
Yeah.
Not like, there's no, like, gore, but, like, I don't know, there's something about it, like, just gritty.
Which you could also say is, if that's what you wanted to bring to your movie, wouldn't you look at, like, a fun horror guy? I'm not talking about, hey, let's get Wes Craven to do this. But hey, here's a guy who does horror and fantasy. You're going to find, like, throughout this trilogy, that he has a wide berth of mixing comedy, horror, fantasy. And by that time, also, Sam Raimi's production company had made Xena Warrior Princess, which... You say what you want to about that show being cheesy UPN action stuff, but that show was really, really popular. That show was groundbreaking in a lot of ways. I mean, people talk today about, like, there's no female heroes. It's like Xena Warrior Princess was a huge show at the time. That was a huge female warrior TV show and intellectual property.
I didn't even realize Sam Raimi did that.
Sam Raimi's production company was behind that, and he was involved in producing that series. People in Sam Raimi's camp, I think, worked kind of in and out of that show, and
it's very cool.
It's shot, I think, in New Zealand. He was involved in that. And if you looked at, like, in 2000, when they were putting or late 90s, when they were putting a Spider-Man team together, you know, and they were looking at, like, who do we get for this? I think it kind of makes sense that if Sam Raimi's name comes up and you go, well, what's he done? He's done kind of superhero stuff. He's done kind of action stuff, and he does it with a balance of comedy. The comedy is not so much in this movie that we're talking about now.
Yeah, I don't see much.
But he does it with comedy and this dark edge on it. I can kind of see where it makes a lot of sense to go, this guy will make something that's not warm and fuzzy for kids, but also not inaccessible to kids. You know what I mean?
Right. I guess, I don't know. This is the fourth Sam Raimi movie I've ever seen.
Oh, what else have you seen?
The first Spider-Man.
Oh, the Spider. Yeah.
So this is my first step out of his Spider, and I'm like, what?
You ever see Drag Me to Hell?
No. Wait, is that the? Maybe I have.
There's like a gypsy curse on this woman, and she's trying to get it removed, and going to all these. It just winds up and up and up and up.
I think I have seen that.
He did that like
part of that
after the Spider-Man trilogy, and it was really hailed as this big thing because it was like Sam Raimi returning to his horror roots,
going back to what he's good at.
Yes. Well, what he started, and what I think a lot of his hardcore fans just know him as this horror guy. And it was kind of a return to form for him. And I really, really like that movie. I really like Drag Me to Hell.
Okay, so I guess this is my 5th Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
Okay.
But to also speak to the horror thing, Richard Donner made Superman in 1978, I want to say.
The classic
The
Superman?
old Christopher Reeve Superman. Yeah. Before that, he had done a movie called The Omen. Have you ever heard of The Omen?
Is that about like the big black dog?
No, that's Cujo.
Okay.
The Omen is about basically this child who is the Antichrist. And it's a really disturbing horror movie about this cursed child. And how that kid is creepy as shit, Damien. I don't think I haven't seen that movie, but I read this article about how like one of the seasons of American Horror Story like is inspired by that movie. Oh, really?
Because there's like this child demon, who's raised by like it's a whole thing.
Yeah, it's raised by like this diplomat's family, and it's think of like Good Omens is sort of like
the Antichrist.
Yeah, the baby that gets mixed up in the diplomat's family and things like that. It's a roundabout kind of way that probably could be seen as a tribute to The Omen. But The Omen's actually a really good movie. It's not that it's hardcore horror, but it is a 70s disturbing movie. And then he went and made Superman, which is maybe the most brightly colored, accessible to kids superhero movie in the history of probably the whole genre. Like, that is through and through a family film. That is not gritty and dark. Like, it is nothing like today's superhero movies.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of directors have like varying range.
Yeah.
But I just sometimes it surprises me.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Like if Taika Waititi just suddenly started doing like these dark like Mother or something with no humor in it at all.
Yeah, he's never done anything dark and gritty or at all depressing about Nazis or the Holocaust or anything like that.
I mean, cut the jokes out.
Yeah, no, I know. Like, it is actually surprising to think of, like, Taika Waititi doing something like Jojo Rabbit that is actually super dark when it makes those dark turns. Right. And super tense, and also still very funny in some, like, there's something, I think he's an anomaly that you can't even bring into this conversation because his stamp is so distinct, and no matter what he does. So, but I would say that Sam Raimi is kind of similar. I think what he does with his own fingerprints. But to take it back to The Evil Dead, in 1981, if you had told somebody, hey, you know that indie horror movie that you love that's full of pus and gore and all kinds of just disgusting shit? That guy's going to direct a brightly colored Spider-Man movie in 20 years. Everyone would have been like, what? What are you even talking about?
I want to show someone the scene where a pencil gets stabbed through a woman's ankle.
Oh my god, that hurts so much.
And then immediately show them Peter Parker in Spider-Man 3 with the black suit
walking
down the sidewalk and tell them they're by the same director.
Same director made these. Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Over 20 years apart.
I mean, I'm sitting here through this conversation thinking of Spider-Man, the original, the first Spider-Man movie. But yeah, it's the Spider-Man trilogy gets really bad.
It gets wonky fast.
But this is the other piece. His car appears in everything. Bruce Campbell, the star of this movie, also appears in everything. I think almost everything that Sam Raimi
But
makes.
Not always like a major role. Sometimes
no, he cameos. He cameos in the Spider-Man movies. He has a cameo at the end of Darkman, I know. I don't know if he appears in Drag Me to Hell or not. But yeah, I mean, him and Sam Raimi have this working relationship that goes back to this movie.
It's very cool.
It is cool. And, this movie made Bruce Campbell kind of a bigger name. This kind of brought him into the movie star realm because this is his trilogy.
Right. Can we talk about some of, like, the faults of this movie?
Sure.
I don't want to be like, here's why I hate Sam Raimi.
Do you hate Sam Raimi?
I don't.
You can say if you do.
No,
everybody's not to everybody's taste, but I am going to have to ask you to leave.
Okay. That's fair. We can close... You can close this episode out with just 40 minutes of silence.
40 minutes of, you should really watch Darkman. Yeah, like, that's all it is.
No, I don't hate Sam Raimi, but I don't particularly like this movie.
That was my next question, and I don't begrudge you that at all, honestly.
Here's the thing, is I like the elements of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I would go as far to say I like each scene of this movie. It's just when it's together.
It's rough.
I wrote down that Sam Raimi is great at tension and release. He is so good at setting things up and then bam.
Agree.
But that when you watch it 30 times over, I thought this movie was ending. I thought I was on like the third climax.
Yes.
When they shoved the girl, or when the girl had come back up from this trapdoor or whatever. Right. And then there was still 40 minutes left in the movie.
Yes.
With one person who was surviving by himself at this point, basically. And then he goes through 40 minutes of
just
trial
running
after trial after trial. Finally comes
running,
out victorious.
Burning things, running, burning things, firing into the woods.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then he finally comes out victorious and then is killed in the last second of the movie for no reason. Right. That ending was just like a big fuck you to the audience.
It was cheap. It was a gimmicky it was like the last jump scare. It's like every bit of like tension, every time they built it up and the guy's alone, whoever it is, there's a jump scare. There's like these cheap jump scares that come out through the, like when the girl, after she gets, trigger warning, sexually assaulted by a forest. And then she runs back and she's looking for the key to open the cabin. And then like Ash reaches out and grabs her. Yeah. And pulls, like, it's just like this series of jump scares. And then they cap it with a big jump scare.
And what upsets me about that is this movie started out with the forest stalking its prey. And I thought it was really clever that it was ending with him defeating the forest.
Making it to sunrise.
Daylight.
Yeah.
He's going to his car. He's escaping. And then they start out with the forest stalking again. And I'm like, okay, it's going off to its next prey. This is a nice way to cap off the ending.
Right.
And then I look away and I hear a scream and it's the credits rolling and I have to go back and look at what the last thing was. And it was just so bizarre.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of, I think, problems with the pacing of this movie. Because it moves along at this really good clip. And this movie's not long. It's only like an hour and a half. It moves along really good. But it is about halfway into this movie, it just enters a loop where it repeats itself over and over for the next half hour. And like the whole third act is just a series of the same thing over and over. And it's really exhausting by the end of it.
And what I struggle with is there's no character. There's just no character. Like, none of these people matter. There's no, like, struggle. There's no goal. There's no...
Right.
It's just chaos for a whole hour. And I also wrote down that one of my downsides of this is that the actors, I feel like, didn't have chemistry. Like, there are scenes in the beginning where it's like, oh, we're having fun, we're partying in this cabin, but it doesn't feel like that.
Yeah.
Like,
I think Bruce Campbell is really, he's very charismatic, and that's the Bruce Campbell thing. That's what you get with him, and I think he's always had it. But I get what you're saying. This is what you get with indie film a lot of times is at the time that independent films are made a lot of times, these are just the director's friends. These are a lot of times just sort of like, they're not real seasoned actors. I think the dialogue in this movie is super dumb. Like a lot, it doesn't like Ash, and I really give it to Bruce Campbell. I think he's good in this movie. But he doesn't have a lot to work with. He's given his toast at dinner, and he's like, "Party down," and they're like, "Yeah," and it's like, "What is
seriously?"
It's really cheesy. It's really just, it's not great dialogue.
But what gets me is there's one scene, the scene where he gives his girlfriend a like necklace.
I love that scene.
It exactly, and it shows okay. He can do this.
He's a prankster a little bit.
He can write these sweet moments and give them character, but he just doesn't devote the time to do it to the rest of the movie. And I feel like that would really uplift this movie. I would, care about this character.
The character
surviving.
moments, right.
Like there's that moment where he's holding like the necklace and like kind of preparing himself for the final battle. That's cool. But like, it just needed more.
I get it, because that scene aside, you don't really... Well, it turns... Cheryl, the first girl to go into the woods, the first girl that they lock in the cellar, she's Ash's sister. And that's not apparent. It's not said until, like, way into the movie. Like, and it's just said in passing. It's like, because the whole time I'm like, wait, why does Ash have to take care of her? Why is he? I mean, you just are like, oh, he's taking her into town because, he's being a good friend or whatever. And then it's like, why is he more protective than anybody else is? And then it's like, oh, he's her brother. And it's just like, it's said so quickly that you can miss it.
I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, it's just like a very passive... Because he's like annoyed with her, but also protective of her. And it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense because they're siblings. Like, but when you don't know they're siblings, you just think it's like bad character writing.
Right, and there's no like... There's no moment of, oh God, what are we going to do with this... with my sister now that she's locked. They don't even do anything. They're just like, okay, well,
just lock her in there and
nighty night.
We'll get her some essential oils tomorrow and see if it's bizarre. And I don't look for like realism of like, oh, these kids would have it all figured out. But I think you're right. There is a big lack of like character development. And I think part of that comes from having five people. You know what I mean? Like there's 5 people, but really only like one of them matters or 2 of them matter. Evil Dead 2, which we're going to get to, doesn't have this big group of people. You know what I mean?
5 isn't that big though.
It's not that big, but really Sam Raimi only wrote like 1 character's worth of character development. And then the other 3 are just absolutely disposable characters from the get-go. Like, there's no reason to have these other 3 characters there when Ash and Linda are the only ones that really matter. They're the only ones that he devotes any time to. And that's why in Evil Dead 2, they're the only 2 in the cabin.
Sure. Well, it looks like he wrote that and was like, well, these other characters can't contribute to this storyline. And it's like...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but even if they're going to die, they can have their own storyline.
They totally could, yeah.
You can have the guy that's like a prankster or whatever who was playing the audio and freaking people out. Like, you could have him be the guy in Planet of the Apes 2 who's a complete asshole and then just gets his shit wrecked.
That is kind of who that guy is. You know, like Steve. Is that it?
Maybe.
Scott,
yeah. Okay.
God, that guy's awful. But yeah, the whole that is the entirety of his character. Is he's just the dickhead friend that you know.
I don't know. There's more to do here. And I feel like if the essence of your story is like these people who are alone and trapped and the environment around them is evil and trying to kill them, then, you know, there's a lot there to work with. And I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it's...
No, because I think you're making a really strong point that there is a lot of potential here that just didn't get tapped. That for whatever reason, Sam Raimi, and I'm trying to give Sam Raimi a lot of forgiveness because this was his first film.
Yeah.
And also because apparently there were budgetary restrictions. Maybe he wanted to make this a 2-hour film. Maybe he wrote a lot more scenes that developed these characters out more. But film is expensive, and there was no digital at the time. Making a movie in the late 70s on your own was a very expensive venture. You know what I mean? Like, just buying film stock was crazy expensive. So, there are a number of reasons that corners could have been cut on this movie, on top of the fact that he was still kind of a green filmmaker. You know, he wasn't quite who he would be later.
Well, it's basically a film project, is what it feels
kind of.
Like, this is a concept so that he can test out these film techniques. Like, there's a lot of really cool shots in here. Like, I even made note of when they're first going down into the basement, there's this shot of, like, we're going between the steps, and we're seeing...
Oh, glimpses. Yeah, that's a great shot.
There's a lot of really good shots.
There is, I will, and I did have that in our show doc. I think the shots are super interesting. There's a lot of POV shots and reverse POV shots. There's a lot of really tight on the face shots. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of great tracking shots.
And it all works to give the audience emotion, to give them tension,
for sure.
Make them feel things.
I think that is really the strongest part of this movie is the cinematography of it. And I think that helps with a lot of the practical effects, cheesy as they are, cheap as some of them are. When Cheryl is coming up out of the cellar at one point, like the shot of it, it's clearly like a doll. It's like not even a person in makeup. Like it is just like a dummy that has a ton of zombie makeup just caked on the face.
Every time you point stuff out like that, I'm just like, I didn't notice any of that.
Yeah,
like,
but that's the thing.
I was fooled.
It's shot really well with a quick cut so that if you either don't notice it or you notice it and you forgive it right away. You have to understand like that what a lot of indie movies are, you got to go in just forgiving that they're cheap, that they look cheap. You got to go in and go, give me something well written that has a good concept behind it that I can buy into. My cousin Ben made his first movie, and he calls it, he says straight up, this is a micro budget horror movie called Don't Run. And that movie, he paid for it himself. Absolutely himself. We're going to see a movie later on this season, El Mariachi, that Robert Rodriguez made on his credit cards. Like,
right.
These things are cheap, and they look cheap, and you can laugh at them for being cheap. But they also all give you this concept that you can buy into, and you know in the back of your head, they're working with really small budgets here. I'm going to forgive what doesn't look real.
Right. That 1 second of zombie doll.
Yeah.
They had to buy a doll for that.
Right.
They had to...
Right.
There's this whole thing.
And I think they reuse it in a few other shots where it's like...
Well, they better.
Yeah.
They have it.
Yeah. They get the most out of everything in this movie. And I think that's super impressive. I believe Sam Raimi had worked as a magician before he was a filmmaker.
Okay.
And I think that...
So he was able to possess tree branches and get them to move around.
Yes. But I do think that helped him make practical effects. That he understood how to do some of these things, and more importantly, how to present it to an audience so that it looked real, so that it hid the fake part. You know what I mean? I think that really worked in his favor.
I think talking about practical effects, one of the most like jaw-dropping scenes was when he burns the book.
Yeah.
And all of the zombies, they fall down and they like burn, their flesh burns off, they turn into cockroaches, they turn into this like moldy sludge that then
it's so gross.
Turns a different color.
Yeah.
It reminds me of when they step outside of the house in Beetlejuice.
Oh yeah, and they start aging.
Yeah, they see that weird world with the
sandworms. Yeah.
It reminds me of those kind of special effects where it's like this surreal, colorful,
for sure,
experience that like feeds off of like, what do people not like? They don't like bugs. They don't like
body horror.
Yeah. They combine all this stuff into this thing that's surreal. Like it's something that would never happen, but it draws on things that do happen and make us afraid to make this thing scary.
For sure. It's off-putting. It makes you feel gross.
Yeah.
Even though you know it doesn't have, and I think the thing with body horror, or the thing with me anyway, I don't like body horror. I enjoy some movies like The Fly, movies that have body horror. What's that guy's name? Cronenberg does a lot of body horror stuff. And I enjoy some of those movies, but I'm also very, very disturbed by those movies. Because anytime I see something happen to somebody's body, I feel the phantom part of it. You know what I mean?
Like when a limb bends the way it's not supposed
to. The worst. But the other part that I think is super off-putting and super effective in this movie is when the whole house is possessed, and like the film projector comes on, and like the light bulb starts filling up with blood, and it's like projecting blood, like of this red light on everything. And it is like, that is such effective horror on a budget, to just turn all this shit on and off, a bunch of weird noise, which is better than some of the other like weird noises in this. Like, some of this shit is just like annoying.
Well, this movie is a lot of screaming. There's like 5 minutes of a woman screaming straight, like multiple times.
It's a lot. And when Linda gets like possessed, Ash's girlfriend gets possessed, and she's like, hee hee. She does that for like 10 minutes straight. And it's like, I just want... Go bury her, Ash, or I'm going to. Like, I am so annoyed by this. But like, seeing her like that, like the makeup effects, I think, are really good. And just the idea that plays on like the Exorcist thing of like, oh, Linda's like a little girl possessed by a demon now. And the Exorcist still just terrifies the shit out of me.
Yeah, there's a lot of like female, like, witches. Like, there's this weird... I don't know how to explain it.
That is weird. All the women get possessed and all the men just get, like...
Just die.
That's really strange. I wonder if there's, like, a witch connection that I didn't pick up on until just now.
I don't know. Gives me weird vibes.
Cancel Sam Raimi. He's a misogynist.
I'm not trying to cancel him.
No. I'm not either. I'm just saying, like, that's a really weird aspect of this movie that I never realized until just now.
It just seems very male-centric.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
not
weird.
A bad thing, just not very thoughtful on his part.
Well, I don't even know if it was intentional or that's just how it shook out, but yeah.
Right.
But this was the first time I have sat all the way through this movie. I think I had started this movie and shut it off 20 or 30 minutes in one time before, and maybe I've seen part of it or seen clips of it somewhere. So yeah, I started this movie and shut it off at some point in my life. You not liking this movie, I'm not going to begrudge you that. I'm not, now that I've seen it, I appreciate this movie for what it is.
Right.
I don't think I would revisit this movie very often. I think it's an interesting study in making an independent film. Like,
sure.
But I don't find a ton. I think there's, like you said, some great scenes in this movie. And I don't want to shit talk this movie because I really do appreciate it, but I don't think I would revisit this movie a whole lot.
No, I don't think I'm going to watch it again. And I'm interested because this seems very standalone. But there's two more. So
right.
I'm not quite sure what to expect from sequels.
Do you want me to tell you?
Sure.
Evil Dead 2 is basically like Stephen King saw Evil Dead and really liked it. And invested some money in Sam Raimi basically remaking this. So basically,
so it's a remake.
It's essentially a sequel to this in that it's called Evil Dead 2, but it's really like Evil Dead 2.0. It's him getting some production value behind this movie and kind of remaking it.
So Stephen King saw the potential here.
Yeah.
That we're kind of talking. We're basically Stephen King. We're seeing this potential in this movie. And
yeah, that's really it. And like Stephen King, he has a pull quote on like the poster of this that like this is the most original horror film in years or something like that, something along those lines. He was a big fan of this movie, and I think understood like yes, this guy put this movie together on this shoestring budget, and he was able to see past that budget and see what this is. This is a bottle movie. A lot like, I think probably at the time, King was probably around the time that he was writing Cujo, which all takes place in one place about being terrorized in this small space. You know, and I don't know if one influenced the other.
It's a Doctor Who has a lot of these episodes. They're called like Base Under Siege. Like a lot of them are just like, oh, we're in a submarine or a space station where we can't go without outside of the walls of the set.
They're called, a lot of people call them bottle movies. They take place in one space.
Yeah.
12 Angry Men would be like a bottle movie. It's all in this one room.
Pretty much all plays are bottle things.
Not all, but like they make the production a lot simpler. But it's interesting to hear someone go like, oh, Evil Dead, it's so original. Because now it's such a trope that Cabin in the Woods was basically a send-up of horror movies and horror movie tropes, and it's set in the place that is this.
Well, I was actually going to bring up Cabin in the Woods because
go for it.
That movie has homages to this movie. Like there's, unless I'm misremembering, but I'm pretty sure there's that POV shot where they go around the cabin and we see through the windows.
Yeah.
Cabin in the Woods has that too, right?
It has that. It has them going into the basement and finding a book that they read from that wakes demons up. It has a girl getting assaulted in the middle of the woods. Cabin in the Woods is a collection of horror movie tropes, and this is kind of the central point of that, is of what that movie is sending up. I say sending up, but I feel like Cabin in the Woods is an homage and kind of like a love letter to these things that are now tropes.
Yeah, it's less like Scary Movie.
Yeah.
And it's...
Yeah. I love Cabin in the Woods, by the way. I think that's a great sort of meta commentary on horror movies.
It is, and it's got baby Chris Evans. Right?
No.
Is that the wrong Chris?
Chris Hemsworth.
Is that it?
Thor, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And he's not a baby in there. He is basically a 35-year-old college student.
Hey, he's a baby.
But no, I love that movie. Bradley Whitford from Get Out is in that movie.
Yeah.
Richard Jenkins, who I love. That guy from, he plays the neighbor in Shape of Water.
Okay. Yeah, the gay one.
Yeah, they're the two like control room guys in Cabin in the Woods.
Oh, that's right. The ones watching everything.
they're the best. I love them in that movie. Yeah, Cabin in the Woods is great. But I think that without this movie, there's no Cabin in the Woods. I think there's none of that stuff.
This movie is a good blueprint. It's just not fun to watch. And that's a shame. Like, I'm going to rewatch some of these scenes. I actually had to before recording this because I forgot the order in which the horrific things happened.
Yes.
But yeah, I want to rewatch parts of it. It's just all together, man. It is exhausting.
It is. I have the thing I wrote down in this as I was watching it and then doing the show doc is in that it's kind of patched together. I mean, there's 5 characters in this movie. This is R-rated Scooby-Doo. This is the group of kids, college kids, going off and finding a haunted house somewhere.
Right.
But to that note, I think this, and I understand Scooby-Doo is incredibly formulaic and incredibly dated. Scooby-Doo is also like a huge thing to me when I was a kid. So This is R-rated Scooby-Doo but it's not fun the way Scooby-Doo is. You know what I mean? Like, it's...
Are you saying it should be more fun?
I think it could be a lot more fun than it actually is. This movie is fun at parts, but it really, really drags. And this is where I think Evil Dead 2, which I do enjoy a lot, this is where Evil Dead 2 trumps it, I think.
Okay.
I think he is becoming more refined as a filmmaker. He understands Ash as a character a little bit more, and he understands how to have fun within this structure a little bit more.
Right.
And he has more money to play with.
To do the things
Let's not pretend that doesn't help, like...
That helps a lot. I feel like you brought up Stephen King, and we've talked about Stephen King before about how, like, his horror movies are so great and books because of like the horror is effective because he has those really good genuine happy parts that distract you, that forget the jokes, the tension breakups. And I feel like there's opportunities in this movie for them, like the party where he toasts if he hadn't said anything really weird.
Party down.
Or like, I don't know, like in the car where they're driving off, like you could make a gag in there somewhere or something. There's opportunities.
There is. And I think there are points in there. Probably my favorite scene is when I think Linda is guessing the playing cards. And she's getting them all wrong.
Yeah.
Which I think Ghostbusters stole, by the way.
Oh.
Having seen that. But then Cheryl starts
guessing them right.
Starts and slowly her voice. I love that scene. That scene is so good at just slowly amping up tension, and you're going like, wait, what? Did they? I thought at first, I'm like, did they ADR this and just put random playing cards without realizing they could see, because like indie film like makes mistakes like that all the time. And then you're just like, oh no, the other girl's messing with her. And then Cheryl starts like calling them out, and oh my God, is that creepy?
Face changes
yes,
and everything.
It's so effective and so fun. Like, I want more of that. Yeah. Like, I want more of that kind of fun throughout this movie.
Right, but that kind of turned into just the amping up to
the gore
going
fest.
100 for 40 minutes straight.
Right, that's right. That's the beginning of the end. And you think that fun is going to carry throughout, and it just kind of runs out of gas about halfway through that run. For me.
Yeah.
For me.
I think I would ultimately say I'm not going to watch this again, but like us talking about the pros has made me more excited to watch the sequel, the remake,
whatever we want to. I don't know how to label
let's polish this up. Let's see.
And I've not seen Evil Dead 2 in a while. I may be remembering it a little bit wrong, but it is. I do know at its heart, it is essentially a redo of this movie, and I really hope you go in with an open mind and don't let this one make a chore out of it, and that we can kind of make a fresh approach to this.
Yeah.
Because we keep saying it, whatever the drawbacks of this movie, its heart is in the right place, I think. But it's just not very much fun. It's,
as far as like first movies go, I think it's incredible.
For sure. I'm trying to think of other indie filmmakers who had such a strong, first outing.
Yeah.
And I would say like Kevin Smith made Clerks. I'm kind of a naysayer in that I think a lot of Kevin Smith's work, it's not that it doesn't age well. I think you grow out of it. I think it's aimed at a very specific age. And once you're no longer that age, it's kind of not relevant to you anymore.
It loses you, yeah.
A little bit. But Clerks, honestly, for that came out, I was a perfect age for it, and it's a really competently made movie for a guy who sold his comic book collection to make it, to pay for it. Robert Rodriguez, like we talked about, and like we're going to talk about down the road. Great. The 90s was really a big time for indie film. It was kind of an indie film boom. And those are two big standouts, and then they broke into the mainstream.
Well, isn't that, you were just talking about film being expensive? Isn't that like when digital cameras were becoming more available?
Probably more available, but I think in the 90s people were still shooting on film a lot. I think they were probably coming on the market, but it was probably so expensive that it was probably harder to get a hold of than film stock.
I was just thinking maybe it's like an accessibility thing that led to a boom.
I think it's become a lot more accessible, but people are shooting movies on iPhones now, full on movies. And, when your phone camera has gotten to be like cinema quality, like that's pretty impressive. It makes it really accessible for a lot of people.
Then again, the phone's $1,000, but
that's a lot cheaper than $100,000 movie camera. I mean, you were able to get a hold of an actual digital film camera to do an indie film project when you were in high school.
I was. Only because my theater director he had his own kind of production company.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, they are accessible to people. Like, if you know, the chances are, somebody who can get you a rental, get you,
there are more options.
If I think of almost anyone in America asks around, they can find somebody with a camera.
Eventually,
a friend of a friend of a friend, even, but they are accessible to regular people, essentially. They're expensive still, but you could theoretically get a hold of one and make a film if you wanted.
Yeah, and I think more people do that. More people make like short films or
commercials. People are able. I did some work right out of college for a small studio that shot infomercials for local businesses and things like that.
Right.
Like it's attainable. But then, roll the calendar back 40 years now. Yeah, this movie's 40 years old. It was a big deal to get a movie made, as 18 fake Shemps will attest. So
you gotta make it all worth the effort.
Yeah, I think this movie is impressive. Just maybe not a ton of fun. I think that's where we're coming out on this.
The headline should be as impressive as it is gross.
There you go. That should be the pull quote for this film. Ooh. But Evil Dead, I would say if you are into indie film and process and production, check it out because the process is visible here. You can kind of see how they did certain things, and it's interesting.
I want to know if there's behind the scenes or if there's like documentaries about the making, because it really is a testament to it.
I will recommend what Hammond Chamberlain recommended to me. We shout him out on the show all the time. Jane Hammond C, thank you. I told him we were watching these because Army of Darkness is his favorite movie. And he recommended watching these with the director's commentary on. I'm sure there are documentaries or some behind-the-scenes footage or something that you can find on these, but I'll bet they talk about it a lot in the commentary. I watch these on HBO, and I have digital copies of them. I don't have them with commentary. But if you do own the DVDs or something, that is a recommendation that's coming through us, is turn the commentary on and watch.
I think that's always interesting.
I think a lot of times it really is. It can be really fun. If it's not
too pretentious. Oh, well, I was lighting it this way.
I would imagine that Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell talking about these movies is really fun because they're both pretty interesting guys who I think like to have a lot of fun with these kind of projects.
Yeah. Them just goofing off.
Yeah. But that's where I think we'll leave this one, and we will pick it up next week with Evil Dead 2.
All right.
Sound good?
I'm ready for it.
Thanks for sitting through this with an open mind, Oz. I know it was kind of a chore for you, but I'm glad you got something out of it.
We both made it out alive, unlike
everyone in this movie. We are Sam Raimi's car. We are the lone survivors of this movie.
That's right.
Let's move along to shout-outs. What do you got this week, Oz?
This week for my shout-out, it's a music suggestion. Lil Nas X just released an album called Montero.
Okay.
That is his name. Because it's a reference to the movie Call Me By Your Name, where you call your lover by your name. So he's calling... It's dedicated to someone he's in love with, but he's calling it by his name. It's a whole thing. I'm recommending it because it's really good. And it's actually very groundbreaking because
it's all remixes of Old Town Road.
That was his old album, Dad. No, but he did make like 16 versions of that.
Right.
No, Lil Nas X is a gay rapper, and that is something that is very, very rare. And there's this thing that's talked about, like the rap world is kind of hard to break into, and there's things like Cardi B, she wrote WAP, and Lizzo, she writes these provocative songs about fat people.
Yeah.
Like that's just what it is. It's the way of breaking into these spaces is by being provocative, getting attention, and like living as you truly are. And so to see Lil Nas X kind of just be himself, and he has very kind of dirty songs in this, but he also has like really sweet ballads and pop songs, and he has guest stars. Like he wrote a song with Elton John in here, but then he also has Doja Cat.
Oh, they probably met at like the gay agenda meetings.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of us. One of us. But it's just one of those things, and I found this album, like, something that spoke to me, because it was something I could relate to, and I think that's cool.
I think that's cool, too. I mean, that's... Like, we can sit here and shout out music that's popular all day long. If it doesn't speak to you, like, what's the point? You know what I mean? Like...
Right.
You should be shouting out music that you like.
And I don't think this speaks to everyone, but it is an experience, like, it's, again, breaking into rap music. So it's this thing that's not talked about in rap music. And so it's giving a voice to people in other communities who don't always hear, oh, being gay is okay.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, well, like, rap music was kind of that, and disco music was that before that, was giving a voice to non-white people. Disco music was... and I didn't realize this until recently, because I never was, like, a disco fan. I wasn't alive for it, but just, like, in hindsight, I was like,
yeah,
that's kind of weird music. It's not really for me.
Growing up post-disco.
But, like, the whole, like, death before disco movement, and a lot of disco sucks. And I'm not going to say that everybody who was opposed to disco and, you know, carried that banner was this way, but that disco, like, culture, for lack of a better word, was essentially, like, because that was a space for a lot of queer people, a lot of gay people in the 70s, that a lot of the hatred for disco was rooted in hatred for gay people.
Right.
And I didn't realize that. I thought it was like, oh, it's because it's kind of shitty dance music and ugly clothes that's why people didn't like it, because that's what I found kind of off-putting about it. But it's like, it makes a lot of sense that became a racist and a homophobic way to be racist and homophobic, was to denounce disco. And I think that carried through when, like, house music and hip hop and rap started. Was a lot of people who just didn't like black people. You know, it was no coincidence that, like, there was this big divide between country music and I love country music, you know, and I know not everybody in country music is a racist asshole, but let's call it what it is. A lot of the fan base is, you know, not very tolerant of rap music, and we all know why they're not very tolerant of rap music.
Right. I've heard a lot in recent years about, like, the hatred of, like, even, like, things like jazz. Some people like mock jazz, and that's rooted in kind of seeing other cultures as lesser.
Well, I mean, and as all of these things have become more diverse, and, like, you know, like, there's white jazz musicians and there's white rappers and there's, you know, and it's just sort of like, over time it just evolves into that, and it's more homogenized. But, like, the roots of all of these things are, like, jazz was black music.
Yeah.
Country music was black music, essentially.
Blues music was
and for
black
sure.
music.
And it's not like, I'm not arguing, like, appropriation. I think it's a good thing that black people are coming into country music again. White people are into jazz. White people are rapping. That this music has become bigger and for everybody, because it's just more and more acceptance all the way around. And people aren't skeptical of white rappers coming in anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because if you can go and hang in that world, they're like, oh, you know.
It's creating spaces.
Right. But I think that's really interesting. And on the other note, and I did not come up with this because I don't really follow Lil Nas X, but somebody did point out, when Old Town Road came out, and, like, Billy Ray Cyrus, there was, like, a mix with Billy Ray Cyrus on it.
Yeah.
And that hit, like, the country chart and, like, went up. And it's before anybody really understood who Lil Nas X was. And then somebody pointed out, like, hey, guess what, country music fan base?
Oh, boy.
The number one song on your chart is written by a gay black man. And shove that up your ass. It just is like the kind of the biggest FU to the people. Not, I hate, you know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to throw a whole fan base under the bus, but
the vocal
you know,
ones.
Country music fan base, clean out your ranks. Like, you know what I mean? Like, more Sturgill Simpson, less whoever that guy is who shouts the N-word every time he gets drunk and is...
Whatever, yeah.
You know what I mean? You know who I'm talking about? Like
I've heard of it, yeah. But with Little Nas X, he basically, like, broke into the scene. Like, he was kind of a one-hit wonder.
Yeah.
And then he just kept making more and more music and then was like, okay, you can't get rid of me. And guess what? I'm gay. Like, deal with it.
By the way, if anyone wants a transcript of this conversation, I hit the dictation thing on my iPad, and it's basically got the entire thing written out here.
Oh, that's cool. Keep it going.
Let me know if I need to send this to you. But no, good recommendation now that we've talked for 20 minutes on that, because tangents are what we do.
Go for it. Leading into our next tangent, what is your shout out?
Mine, I'm going to keep it short here. It's a graphic novel I got in the mail this week called Canopus. And it is a science fiction kind of trippy graphic novel by artist Dave Chisholm. I pointed him out last season. Speaking of jazz, he did a graphic novel called Chasing the Bird about Charlie Parker. It's brilliant, and I love that one, and this is his new one. He just announced his next one coming out. I'm not going to shout it out because I can't remember the name of it right now. But, yeah, this follows a woman. She wakes up. She's in space. She has no idea how she got there. She's lost her memories. And as she is sort of looking for her way back, she is uncovering more and more memories. I'm about halfway through it right now. I'm really, really enjoying it.
You better finish that up because I'm going to steal that right away.
I am going to make sure you read it.
You've said too many buzzwords that I enjoy. Space, science fiction.
All right, take
trippy.
it easy. This isn't Neil deGrasse Tyson level of astronomy in here. But no, it's it's got some real vibes of like 2001 to it. Ad Astra, that Brad Pitt movie that you and I really liked. So check that out. It just released. I did a pre-order on it a couple weeks ago. And I think it hit comic shops a week ago, and then it pre-orders through Amazon or Powell's hit this last week. So that's Canopus, Canopus by Dave Chisholm. And yeah, he's great, and he's a great follow on Instagram and TikTok as well. He does a lot of live drawing, and he is a great jazz musician as well. And sometimes he'll post him playing trumpet or guitar. Really, really cool guy. Check out his work for sure.
Sounds like it, yeah.
On that note, let me scroll through this conversation that I accidentally recorded. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Picture Show with Austin and Phil Rude. If you enjoy our show, please leave a review on your podcatcher of choice. It helps our visibility, and it helps us grow the show.
That's right. And another way to help us grow is to tell a friend. If they don't want to listen to us, don't take no for an answer.
Wow.
Break into their house like you are a tree, and brutally murder them. That got very dark very fast.
Hey, no means no, Forrest.
That's right. Smokey the Bear. Super messed up stuff.
Super. Cancel Smokey. Next week's movie, Evil Dead 2. Please join us for that. If you can, watch along. It's a lot more fun than this one, I promise.
Let's hope.
Austin, you got some social media you want to shout out?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter. I am Austin and Rude, and I am also Old Who Review.
And I am philrude.com. I'm at philrude on Twitter, at philrude75 on Instagram. I'm somewhere on TikTok, but I don't really post that much there. You want to read the credits?
Yep. We did everything ourselves.
Well, there you have it. We'll see you next time on The Picture Show.
See ya.